Good morning. The June 4th, 2025 meeting of the Board of Estimates is now called to order. The board continues to meet in a hybrid format. For those here in person, please take a moment to silence your phones and other electronic devices. For those attending virtually, if you desire an opportunity to speak, we ask that you please keep yourself on mute until the chair recognizes you. When you're called upon, please announce your name and organization and speak loudly and clearly as you present. At this time, I would ask our clerk, Celeste Amato, for any corrections, additions, and noted abstentions for today's agenda.
Thank you, Mr. President, and good morning, everyone. This morning, we have two walk-on items for the non-routine agenda, and they are SB 25-11919. This is for the Department of Housing and Community Development, Perkins Somerset Old Town Transformation Plan Addendum. This is being walked on at the request of the administration. And SB 25-12012 for the Mayoralty Amendment 1 to office lease with the Maryland Port Administration. This is also being walked on this morning at the request of the administration. We have the following deferrals to note this morning. SB 25-11527, Department of Public Works Consultant Agreement, One Call Concepts Locating Services, Inc., for $6,551,250. There was a protest received on this item from Robert DeShiel, but again, the item is being deferred this morning, and it will be deferred until 6/18/2025 at the request of the agency. SB 25-11607, Department of General Services, Extra Work Order Number 2 with Restoration East Incorporated for PRJ 002464, Baltimore City Police Department Headquarters Garage Repairs, Emergency Contract Renovations for $3,015,583.65. This item is being deferred until July 2nd, 2025 at the request of the Comptroller. SB 25-11687, Finance FY26 Cyber Willis Towers Watson Southeast Inc. This item is deferred to July 2nd, 2025 at the request of the Comptroller. SB 25-11735, Finance FY26 Renewal Accident Insurance for Auxiliary Police and Chaplains. This item is being deferred until July 2nd, 2025 at the request of the Comptroller. SB 25-11736 for Finance FY26 Renewal MOED Workers' Compensation Insurance deferred until July 2nd, 2025 at the request of the Comptroller. SB 25-11681, this item is from the Comptroller's Office. It's a resolution of the Board of Estimates establishing minimum health care requirements. This item is being deferred until June 18th, 2025 at the request of the Comptroller. We have two items being withdrawn from the agenda this morning. They are SB 25-11062, Bureau of Procurement, Unauthorized Procurement, Mitchell's Blind and Shade Company, Inc. for $5,170. And Mr. President, I'm just noting for you that the Comptroller has a comment on that item this morning. And SB 25-11567, Bureau of Budget and Management Research, Budget Amendment FY23, Baltimore City Fire Department, Transfer of Funds. This has been withdrawn at the request of the agency. We have no protest, statements of opposition, or statements of support to note for the agenda today. And the following items are on the non-routine agenda. SB 25-11814, Department of Audits, Annual Comprehensive Financial Report and Single Audit for the year ended June 30, 2024. SB 25-11684, Department of Public Works, Rate Increase, Water Rate FY26 for Baltimore County. SB 25-11421, Department of Public Works, Award SC 994, Clarifiers and Gravity Sludge Thickeners Rehabilitation with Ullaman Schutte Construction for $79,900,000. SB 25-11919, Department of Housing and Community Development, Perkins Somerset Old Town Transformation Plan Addendum, and SB 25-12012, Mayoralty First Amendment to Office Lease with the Maryland Port Administration. We have the following abstentions to note this morning. The Honorable Mayor Brandon M. Scott is abstaining on SB 25-10754, Health Department Provider Agreement, Johns Hopkins University. SB 25-11004, Health Department Provider Agreement, Johns Hopkins University. SB 25-11051, Health Department Provider Agreement, Johns Hopkins University. City Administrator Faith Leach, sitting in for the mayor this morning, has no abstentions to note. The Honorable President Zeke Cohen has no abstentions to note this morning. The Honorable Comptroller Bill Henry is abstaining on all travel requests and travel reimbursements. City Solicitor Ebony Thompson has no abstentions to note this morning, and Director of Public Works Khalil Zaid has no abstentions to note this morning. We also do not have any no votes to record as part of the routine agenda this morning. And that concludes our opening statement, Mr. President. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. At this time, I ask for a motion to approve. Comptroller Henry wanted to comment on one of the items.
Yes.
Comptroller.
Thank you, Mr. President. And I'm sorry, the reason I'm interrupting in the middle of the vote for the opening statement, which I know is unusual, is because this item is being withdrawn and not necessarily resubmitted, I won't have any other time to speak on it. And so what I wanted to say, and I'm open to correction by the administration if we misunderstood any part of how this proceeded, but the unauthorized procurement is being withdrawn because the decision was made to pay for the item with a P card. And I thought it would be appropriate to remind the board that this is why we really have to come up with a good system. And the finance department and accounts payable have been working on a way where we can see P-card data, because otherwise this is a great big loophole in our overall joint effort to provide openness and transparency into public spending. And if this had been approved by if this had been on an agenda, it would have been publicly approved, this unauthorized procurement, and then it would have had a check or an EFT issued by accounts payable. But because it's being paid for by a P card, right now, the way the system is set up, that never shows up in open checkbook, and it never shows up here on the board. So no one is seeing that these expenses are being incurred and who they're being paid to and for what. So this was just a reminder that while I'm not upset, and I actually think it's probably structurally a better way to deal with these kinds of small ticket situations rather than have them be items on a Board of Estimates agenda where they're taking up board time even though they are well below the dollar threshold for usual items coming before the board. Having it dealt with through P-card is only better if we have full transparency on our P-card spending, which we don't right now. So I just wanted to make that comment to the board and say that our office remains committed to working with the Department of Finance to make that kind of transparency for P-card spending actually happen.
Madam Administrator, do you want to see your
Yes,
do you want to
so
respond?
I think it's, Faith Lead City Administrator, I think it's important to also remind ourselves of the regulations governing P-cards here. So the administration and agencies should have the ability to make small dollar transactions using a P-card. So when you're talking about a $2,000 or $1,500 or $500, that is not something that necessarily needs to come to the board. I think we've been having broader conversations about what the threshold should be for items that come to the board, but we should be able to move business for low dollar transactions that should not have to come to this board. Now, to your broader point about transparency, I do think there's an opportunity to work with the Department of Finance and the procurement team to, ensure that we're providing reports so we can put that information into open checkbook, but it would further delay the work of agencies if all of these small dollar transactions had to come before the Board of Estimates.
Mr. Comptroller?
Yes, Madam City Administrator, not suggesting that in the slightest. That's why I'm saying I'm actually excited about the fact that the eventual resolution of this issue was we should just pay this on a P card and be done with it. I'm not questioning that. I agree 100%. However, any small expense that agencies make right now under the larger thresholds that we have for the BOE, which may in fact go up, also not concerned, not arguing that. but those expenses are still generally paid for by check or by EFT, and then they show up in open checkbook. It's just the P card spending which right now isn't showing up, and that's the only part of this that I'm respectfully continuing to nudge that we move this forward. Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Comptroller. Thank you, Madam City Administrator. At this time, I ask for a motion to approve and adopt the opening statement as read by the clerk.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and properly seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay.
Gesundheit.
Sneeze does not count. The opening statement has been adopted. And now direct the board members' attention to the memorandum from my office dated June 4th, 2025, identifying matters to be considered as routine agenda items, together with any corrections, additions, abstentions, and no votes that have all been noted by the clerk. I will entertain a motion to approve all the items contained on the routine agenda.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and properly seconded. All those in favor of approving the items on the non-routine agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say nay. The ayes have it. The routine agenda has been
Can you pause for a second?
approved. I am going to pause to recognize Comptroller Henry.
Oh, well, okay. I just got a text saying that Charm TV is actually airing the city council budget hearing right now instead of this. Is everybody okay with that? Was that expected?
My understanding, City Administrator, is
I
that
have the opposite understanding, but I think as long as, I think the biggest thing here is compliance.
Yeah.
And so right now, we have WebEx up, so we should
Oh.
be fine.
Okay, so this is the people can view this at home
Yes,
on
on-
WebEx?
via WebEx.
Oh, okay, all right.
Okay,
yeah,
thanks.
just real quick. So my understanding was that this meeting was going to be recorded. This is what Charm TV told me last night. The council meeting was going to be broadcast live, and then this one would be subsequently broadcast in order to make sure the public has access to their Board of Estimates. Good?
All right, thank you.
All right. Where was I? All right. Seeing no further questions, we will now move on to the non-routine agenda. The first item on the non-routine agenda is SB 2511814 from the Department of Audits for the single audit and the annual comprehensive financial report for the year ending on June 30th, 2024. This request is to note the audit. On behalf of audits, we have Auditor Josh Pash. Auditor Pash, the floor is yours.
Good morning, Mr. President, Mr. Comptroller, Madam City Administrator, honorable board members. My name is Josh Pash. I'm the City Administrator, and we are here to present the ACFR and the single audit. We perform these audits with SB & Company, who is also here with us. The Annual Comprehensive Financial Report, or ACFR, is the city's official financial report and provides detailed and summary reports on the financial status of the City of Baltimore. The single audit is an audit of the city's expenditures or money spent of federal awards, and the single audit's objective is to provide assurance to the U.S. federal government as to the management and use of such funds by the city, including the funds spent by subrecipients of the city. These audits were conducted in accordance with generally accepted auditing standards, and I will now turn it over to SB & Company for the remainder of the presentation.
Thank you, Josh. Good morning. My name is Bill Seymour. I'm the engagement partner with SB & Company. I have with me Tiana Wynn, who is one of the audit partners on the engagement. If we could start on slide 4, we're going to walk kind of high level through our presentation here. Please feel free to stop me with any questions that you may have. We have performed audits of the city's annual comprehensive financial report, as well as we will be performing separate audits of the water utility fund, wastewater utility fund, stormwater, and parking facilities fund. We also performed the uniform grant guidance audit, which is what we used to call the single audit. That is a compliance audit over dollars, federal dollars spent. Along with that, there is a data collection form that takes the single audit and puts it in a fit and format for the federal government. As part of that package, we also included a report on internal controls over financial reporting. Embedded is our observations and recommendations. As part of our audit, we did not audit, and rather we relied on separate audits that were prepared and issued for the pension trust funds, employees' retirement system, the elected officials' retirement system, fire and police retirement system, the Baltimore Hotel Corporation, and the Baltimore City Public School System. However, the city did make certain adjustments to the Baltimore City Public School System for pension and OPEB liabilities and related deferred outflows and inflows and expense, of which we audited those and took responsibility for. Next slide, please. We have issued an unmodified, or if you will, clean opinion on the city's ACFR. We discovered no instances of material fraud. I would caution our audit is not a fraud audit. That would be different in scope. However, professional standards as well as firm standards require that we maintain a healthy skepticism for fraud, to look for fraud in areas tested, and through those procedures, we did not note any instances of material fraud. We received access to requested information when it was available. We did encounter significant delays during the course of the audit process, which caused the audit to be issued later than normally. We identified 6 material weaknesses related to internal controls over financial reporting. When I use the term material weakness, auditors can talk at 3 levels when there are issues with internal controls over financial reporting. The first of which is what we would call a control deficiency. That is the lowest level. Then we have what's called a significant deficiency, and that is defined as an item that's not necessarily material but could be material. And then we have material weaknesses where, in our opinion, what we find is there are certain deficiencies in internal controls where the city would not be able to potentially prevent or detect a material misstatement to the financial statement. So in other words, we found issues in the information that was provided, and journal entries had to be made to the statements. Those areas, cash and cash equivalents, there was a material adjustment that was made to reduce cash as well as increase expenditures and offset to a liability. Grant accounting, and you're going to see this later when Ms. Nguyen speaks, in the recordation of billings as well as expenditures that are made in that reporting, we found deficiencies and errors in that process. Water and wastewater billing, there were adjustments that needed to be made to receivables and to billed amounts to properly present those in accordance with accounting principles generally accepted. And then as well, fixed assets, issues with recordation of construction in progress, moving those balances to be in a depreciable status once they are placed in service. We had to present those entries to make that happen. And then information technology security, we noted certain deficiencies in internal controls related to how the information, the general ledger information, is protected through IT controls. And then a overall financial reporting material weakness that kind of combines, if you will, the separate processes of, if you will, reconciling cash, recordation of cash, but then when you go and you have the same error that shows up in the financial statements, what we believe then is that there was a deficiency, a material weakness in controls related to the financial reporting function whereby management did not identify those errors. Tiana?
Yeah. Thank you, Bill. I'm picking up on slide 6 with a summary of the Uniform Grant Guidance Audit. As a part of the audit, SB & Company tested 11 of the programs that were deemed to be material in accordance with OMB, the Office of Management Budget. That testing of 11 programs gave us 79% coverage of your total federal awards that were received during the year. The minimum required would have been 40%. We issued qualified opinions for 7 of those programs. What that means is that there were material weaknesses or significant deficiencies that were identified within those programs, whereby we were unable to determine the appropriate compliance and reporting as it related to those 7 programs. As Bill mentioned, we did have a material weakness over financial reporting. Coupled with that was also a material weakness over the internal controls for the preparation of the schedule of federal awards, the schedule of expenditures of federal awards. That is the schedule that lists out by assistance listing from the various federal departments and any pass-through funding, all of the federal dollars that were spent during the fiscal year. We also had a combination of 9 other findings that were deemed to be significant deficiencies. So as Bill mentioned, these that were more severe than internal controls, but less severe than a material weakness. The various compliance attributes, as outlined by OMB, are under reporting, eligibility, subrecipient monitoring, cash management, earmarking, and special test. And you'll see on slide 6 off to the side, we've enumerated the number of deficiencies in each of those compliance areas. If you move on to slide 7, that is where you'll see the detailed summary of those qualified opinions over compliance. You'll see each outlined by the assistance listing number. That's the number that it's given to that program from the federal government, as well as the correlating finding number that's included in the report. A summary of those programs, the Housing Opportunity for Persons with AIDS, the Total American Rescue Act, known by many as ARPA. There was a new program that was tested this year that dealt with the response to the healthcare crisis. Again, a few more of the HIV grants, so ending HIV epidemic, HIV emergency relief, as well as HIV prevention activities, and then one additional program, the medical assistance program. In the very last column on page 7, you'll see a summary for the basis or the nature of the material weakness that was identified in those programs that led to the qualification on the opinion related to compliance. If you move to slide 8, we thought it would be helpful to take all of the findings and kind of summarize them into 4 or 5 themes or trends that we saw during the year. So kind of starting off with the improper preparation of the schedule of federal awards itself, and then inaccurate reporting of amounts that were paid to subrecipients. There was lack of evidence to support that certain subrecipient monitoring had been performed during the year. There was also inadequate or inaccurate audit evidence to validate the accuracy of the cash management process. And then last, the late or incomplete submission of certain reports that were due to the federal agencies in accordance with the various agreements that you have with them. On slide 9, I know the font is a little small, but here what we wanted to do was to offer a 5-year look back. You're able to see the various findings by type, the funding departments, so you can have a correlation, whether it's Department of Health and Human Services, Housing and Urban Development, et cetera. The type of finding, so whether it was cash management, subrecipient monitoring, reporting. If it were a repeat finding, that's one of the things that is captured when the information is submitted to the Federal Clearinghouse, is whether or not the finding was new, if it was a repeat finding, and there's information within the report that captures management's corrective action plan for each of the findings that were identified. At the bottom of that page, you'll also just see a summary of the number of material weaknesses and significant deficiencies from 2020 through 2024. I'm going to stop here and see whether or not there are any additional questions or comments. Included in the rest of the materials is a deeper dive into each of those findings that I mentioned, the cause and the condition, and any effect that those findings might have had on the report.
Madam Solicitor?
Thank you so much. Just to go back on your recipient monitoring, are those metrics on what the monitoring is required or what the standards are they communicated ahead of time? And then If not, what are those acceptable metrics, or what would you deem as sufficient? And then where did we, maybe that might be a little bit later on in your deeper dive, but where did we rank there and how can we improve there?
Yep, so it's a kind of a two-part response that I would offer. The first is that within OMB, there are general requirements for which every recipient of federal dollars is supposed to follow as it relates to subrecipient monitoring. That process starts with your risk assessment and how the subrecipients are even selected and your documentation that you adequately perform the risk assessment. The second step after the selection process is to ensure that you have a complete grant agreement or sub-grant or awardee agreement. And that was probably the largest deficiency that we saw. There are a lot of fields or information that have to be included within the agreement when you select that subrecipient and make them aware of your requirements of them. Some of your requirements of them are also hand in hand with the requirements that the federal government gave to you, being the city. So there's, whether it's having the appropriate identification numbers, including in the grant itself or that document that it is federal funds and that it must be handled as such. As well as any reporting requirements that that subrecipient is supposed to have of you, et cetera. Within your grant agreement itself from the federal government, there might be special things that have to be done. A lot of those end up being programmatic in nature, so whether it's doing site visits, gathering data, monitoring. So there's not one answer to your question because it really depends on the federal department from which the funding came, what requirements you have to then pass down and maintain. So the biggest thing would be having the training. So at the onset of every new grant year, taking a step back and saying, what are all of the requirements for this grant for this year? Because the requirements in this period could differ from the next time that grant is awarded to you. So each time, making sure you're aware of what those requirements are and having monitoring tools internally to make sure that that is taking place.
Thank you.
Mr. Comptroller?
Thank you. Good morning. I'm going to save one of my questions, I think, till the end because I want to see what comes in the drive down. But when you were talking earlier about the listing the general material deficiencies, you used two phrases. I recognize all the words from mainstream English, but in the accountant dialect, I was wondering if you could take each of these phrases and convert it into like a plain English version. Material adjustment made to reduce cash. So what does that mean?
So when we were provided the financial statements, when we use the term material, that is an auditor item where when we provide the audit opinion, we're not providing absolute assurance.
You might need to be a little closer to the mic. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
We're not providing absolute assurance. We're providing reasonable assurance that the financial statements are free of material misstatement. We go through a process where we set those amounts as we go through our testing, and when we use the term material, what that effectively means is that the financial statements were materially incorrect when they were provided to us, and we had to provide an adjustment to management to get it back into what we believe was an amount that was within our materiality.
So if the phrase is material adjustment made to reduce cash, that means that the statement said there was more money than there really was.
Correct.
Okay, all right. That's the first one. And then the second phrase was adjustments need to be made to receivables. I think that was later on for water and wastewater billing.
Right. And so that has to do with two parts, looking at the allowance calculation as well as truing up the balances because of the billed and unbilled amounts that are included that were provided originally.
So were the adjustments that needed to be made to receivables, did we think we had more accounts that needed to be billed than we really, or Did we think there was more money that we needed to collect than there really was? Or was there more money to collect than we thought there was?
My understanding and what we looked at is it's the latter, that we have not fully billed for everything.
So there is more money to collect than we thought there was on the records we had?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Madam City Administrator.
Yes. I have two questions. The first question is, I would like to hear a little bit about, since you all have been providing the city's audit for a number of years, and in that time, we implemented Workday. And so just want to hear from the auditors about what we've seen kind of pre and post Workday, if there have been improvements to reporting, or if it has caused further delays or issues with reporting. And then I have another question as a follow-up.
So, I don't know. There's a combination of answers that I could give you again.
Can you speak into the mic?
Yes,
Just wanna
sorry
make sure
about
you're
that.
recorded.
Short, okay. The first one, I'll start with the improvements that we have seen with the implementation of Workday. So when you go back and look at 2020 or 2019 and prior, one of the largest deficiencies that we saw related to timekeeping and the ability to have time and effort reporting to appropriately support salary costs that were charged to federal programs. That is a finding that has almost gone away entirely with the implementation of Workday and being able to capture when an employee spends or incurs time on a grant, that time being charged and captured within the Workday system. The second half of your question that I would say is the city still continues to have challenges with the use of Workday and being able to use Workday to appropriately generate reports that will support the financial records that are being presented.
Got it, thank you. And the second question is actually about this board and our processes and how that interfaces with the grants. So I'll use an example, the unique identifier, the UEI numbers, right? So when this board receives a grant agreement that goes to a subrecipient, there usually is a unique identifier that's included as a part of it. I think as a part of the audit, we would submit that to you, but that might not suffice. Can you talk a little bit about the level of documentation? Because for us, it is, what comes through the Board of Estimates this is our, a part of our system of record. This is our process of record. And so I just want to make sure that we're aligning whatever the city's internal processes are with what your expectations are as an auditor, because the documents that come from here that go to grantees, they're the official documents. And so if they have a unique identifier, for example, then that should be, considered the document of record. But can you talk a little bit more about that so that we can look internally at our own processes and how they're impacting our findings?
Yes, thank you for that. I'm not going to be able to speak to the specific of which grant that was, but I do believe that there were instances during the audit process that the grant agreement or the subaward document that was provided to us and represented as what had gone to the recipient did not have the UEI number on it. And then we were informed later that there was another version that went to the Board of Estimates and it did include the UEI, but we were not able to validate that that version was the version that the subawardee received and obtained. So it seems that there may be different versions of the document or different phases where maybe there could be version control. We were not able to validate that part, but there were different versions. And so the versions that were provided to us as part of the audit did not contain the UEI number.
Got it. And so just to confirm, what you all consider as the formal, official document would be what comes through the Board of Estimates. And that is the document that needs to be produced to you that has the UEI number on it, for example.
Yes, and that it is also signed, countersigned and all with
Okay.
all of the parties involved, yes.
Okay, and any other documents that are produced throughout that process would not be considered the official document because it wasn't executed by this board?
That's possible.
Okay. We can talk a little bit more about
Yes.
that. Thank you.
Sorry about that.
So I first want to really thank the auditor, thank the team for the good work. I am obviously concerned about some of the findings within the audit, which I will note was significantly delayed and found half a dozen material weaknesses and numerous additional deficiencies in financial controls. I am glad to hear there was no finding of fraud. That is important. And I will note that several of the findings appear to be repeat findings from previous audits as well. Throughout the budget hearings we have been holding in the council has emphasized our need for truth in the budgets we adopt to guide our expenditures of taxpayers' money. As we've discussed, we are currently budgeting for hundreds of positions that have been vacant for 18 months, even as we incur significant overtime. And in recent fiscal years, several agencies have engaged in deficient spending, requiring the council to enact supplemental budgets after the expenditures have been incurred and incurred without any prior approval by us, the council. I want to take a moment to appreciate the administration's commitment to work with us to rectify some of these challenges, and particularly to thank Administrator Leach, who works extremely hard to develop strong systems and processes for the city government. At the same time, we need a clean audit. We must have controls in place to ensure we can properly account for taxpayers' money after it is spent. These controls must meet industry standards and must be able to produce accurate and reliable financial information throughout the course of the fiscal year. When I see audit findings warning that the financial department doesn't have the staff or resources to thoroughly review spending, that we lack the right computer programs, that we cannot produce accurate account balances for grants, that our water and wastewater billing systems are still having challenges, I'm troubled. I look forward to conducting oversight in the council to examine the city's plans and timeline for implementing the recommendations presented in this audit before us. I again thank the team, and my one and only question, of the 7, I believe you pointed out, significant deficiencies, I wanted to know if you all had a recommendation of where to start, either from a sequence perspective or in thinking about what the most risk for the city would look like.
I think for me, my number one recommendation would be training and, ensuring that you have the adequate resources, so persons with the appropriate skill and knowledge over the areas that they are overseeing. And then on top of that, having good supervisory review, so that review is also being performed by a person who's not only just checking the box that it was performed, but they're taking a step back and saying, do these results make sense based on my understanding of what should have occurred? Anything to that?
And I would just also add, I think development of specific policies and procedures such that when there are errors that occur, the city has the opportunity to go back and look and do a autopsy of the situation to say, where did our procedures go wrong? So you have an opportunity to go through and document that and update it so that way it can work going forward. Internal controls are not just like a bank rec or an approval on it is a system that is made up of the environment, risk assessment, control activities, and the most really important one, they put it at the top, is monitoring. And in looking at that, as Tiana had mentioned, looking and when you do that review to say, wait a minute, there was a problem. Now let's go inform the folks that did the transaction of the problem so that we're able to fix it and not have it continue updating policies and procedures.
Josh?
So I think also another core place to start in fixing stuff is communication between the agencies and finance. I think
Talk a little.
All right, sorry. I think another primary area to start correcting is communication between the agencies and finance.
Yeah.
I think a lot of the things we ran into were variances between the agencies and finance, and along with what SB said, is just strengthen that communication so everyone's on the same page, everyone knows what we want, and there's consistency between what the agencies are putting in the system and what finance is getting.
So if I could just summarize what I heard, briefly, it was train folks in how to use the systems, supervise the folks who are using the systems, make sure we have sufficient internal controls to be able to see issues before they become catastrophic, and then make sure the finance and the agencies are talking to each other and that there's a clearly streamlined, efficient communications channel so that we don't have confusion existing between the various agencies and the finance department. Does that accurately summarize what I heard?
Yes, Council President.
Great. Madam Administrator?
Yes, thank you. Another question for the auditors. Can you talk a little bit about, and I appreciate that you all detailed the findings over time, because I think that's critically important to see where we have persistent findings each year, but then also where we've had findings that have fallen off. But can you talk to me a little bit about just in general auditing practices, when you have findings, is it that you anticipate that those findings will go away in the very next year? Does it take time? Can you just talk a little bit about when you have a material weakness, what happens after material weakness? Can you just outline a little bit of that process?
Yeah, absolutely. So when we complete the audit, and if you think about it, we issued this audit in beginning of May, and so that is already effectively a full 10 months through the fiscal year. So every one of our findings that we would have, you have 10 months of transactions that were prescribed under the existing system where we had found the issues. So one of the drawbacks to the reporting mechanism through the single audit as well as financial statement audit is because we're looking at historical data. So a lot of times it does take at least another year to go through to be able to adjust that, because we are providing and working through that during the course of the current fiscal year. That being said, the other item from an audit perspective is that once we put an item on the table as a material weakness, professional standards don't allow us to give benefit of the doubt those types of items where we can work around certain items. So you can have, if you will, items that if they would have originally started where we currently are, may not have been as big of an issue, but because we haven't completed the entire process of fixing everything, we still have to use, if you will, the same level of concern looking at the item to be there.
So to summarize that real quick, so it is essentially, as they say, a moment in time analysis, and then there's going to be lag between when the audit is produced and when things are fixed.
Correct.
Got it. Can you talk to me? I think when you started out, you talked about just the categories, the level of findings. Can you remind me of those again?
Yep. So just want to make sure I get them right here. Bear with me. So for internal controls over financial reporting, there were 6 key areas: cash and cash equivalents, the federal grant accounting, water and wastewater billing, fixed assets accounting, information technology, and then an overall for financial reporting.
And then the other thing I would mention is if you take a look at slide 18, you'll be able to see a summary of the types of findings and the definitions of the categories.
Yes.
Madam,
So
wasn't
here's
sure if that was your
here's the
question.
question that I'm getting at. So you have a material weakness, then you have a significant deficiency, right? And so generally, do you anticipate that you go from material weakness to no finding? Do you go from material weakness to significant deficiency? Can you talk to me a little bit about how that process works?
Yeah, and thank you. Normally, if the problem's fixed, you go from a material weakness to not a finding. It's fairly rare that you would go from a material weakness to a significant deficiency to nothing. That can happen if there was something that was unrelated, but it was in the same general category that you could have it. But if you have, once you kind of have the same issue, you work until it's taken off the ledger.
Got it. And so just to repeat what you just described. So typically, you would see if you identified something as a material weakness, let's say in 23, and that issue still remains, it is more likely that it will continue to remain as a material weakness rather than move to a significant deficiency.
Generally speaking, yes.
So, got it. You move from material weakness to you've resolved the problem, not necessarily. Got it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great. Do you want to keep keeping on? Or are we,
We're
good?
If there's any,
Mr. Comptroller?
Yeah, if you could scroll back in the presentation, you paused at a point to ask if there were any questions,
Yes.
and then said there was more. So what was the more?
yep, and thank you, Comptroller. What we've done and we've included in the presentation is additional details of what we summarized in our discussion.
Okay.
But there's not necessarily anything additional that we need to verbalize.
Oh, okay.
From a discussion here.
Well, in that case-
Unless there are specific items the board would like us to cover, we're open to that, but we've covered what we believe we needed to present to you.
Mr. Comptroller?
Well, thank you, Mr. President. Well, then, if that's the case, then yes, then I do have two more questions.
Yes, sir.
Well, one question and then one series of questions. The first question is, just so that I'm sure that I'm straight on this, there is no formal or institutional connection between the financial audits that you're performing and which is technically on all of the agencies collectively as city government, and the individual performance audits that audits provides for individual agencies over the course of years. So, for example, if you note something in water and wastewater billing as part of the financial audit, there's no direct connection, and you do not take into account anything that was previously discussed between the Department of Audits and management about water and wastewater billing during a performance audit of that department.
Thank you, Comptroller. So basically, looking at the performance audit, it would be more of a risk assessment, identifying those of areas to look into. But when it comes to the financial audit, it is, does it comply or does it not comply? Is it materially correct? Is it not materially correct? And that is independent of, findings and clearing those findings. So that's where the financial audit is looking. And does that answer your question?
Well, kind of. I just want to make sure that when you're doing your performance audit, you're identifying risks. But I think the risks you're identifying, and this is the part I want to check, the risks you're identifying are the risk of looking bad in the financial audit, which then they do. And so what I'm trying to get a sense of is, does anyone inside the financial auditing of this make the connection between previous performance audits about an area and the result they're coming up with? Or is that for the board to come up with are we expected to make those connections ourselves?
Yeah, so when we go through, as part of an audit, we do a risk assessment, and through the performance of the risk assessment, we look at the series of performance audits that the city auditor has performed.
Oh, okay, all right. That's what I'm looking for.
It gets baked into the process, but we're not, if you will, updating, reporting anything on the.
But you read those as part of your background information. Okay, that's all I was trying to understand.
Yeah, so we take water and wastewater billing. That is why it's a higher risk area for us in the performance of the audit.
Gotcha. Okay, and then the second question, this is where I'm just trying to get a sense of, oh, I'm sorry. Sure.
Talking about,
Director Zaid?
when you talked about the water, how old that information is. So the information that you're looking at is from the audit perspective. Is it from reports coming in from 2022, 2023? What are we looking for? So as you get some of that information.
So we look at, I guess, reporting at a couple different levels. One is what is the historical that has occurred that goes back a number of years, as well as what was the activity during the course of the current fiscal year, and supporting what is the balance that's currently on the financial statements for the year ended June 30 of '24.
Thank you.
Comptroller, you want the mic back?
Yes, please, thank you. So this is where I'm just trying to get a sense of where we stand relative to our peers. Like, how many other local governments do you guys have as clients? I mean, not an exact number, but dozens?
Dozens,
Yeah,
yes.
dozens, okay. And are any of them as big or bigger than Baltimore City in terms of complexity of operations?
Some are bigger.
Okay. So is this a normal or regular amount of material weaknesses, or is this uncommonly high?
I wouldn't put it as that it's uncommonly high, given the environment that we're currently in.
Okay.
One of the challenges, and this is industry-wide, is there is a dearth of qualified candidates that are available to fill positions in accounting. And unfortunately, governmental accounting isn't necessarily as attractive as SEC reporting and those types of items for young accountants. And so within that, we have a retirement and kind of the great resignation and retirement that came out as a result of the pandemic, that there is less resources are out there. So you're seeing now more findings that are occurring in governmental financial statement audits than what you would have been seeing, say, pre-pandemic, the mid 2015s. There are state-level governments that are receiving qualified opinions on their financial statements. I would mention the city. We issued an unmodified opinion. So to give you an idea, that's the severity of it.
That's exactly the reason I asked that question. Okay,
That
thank you.
is helpful context. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Comptroller, Madam Administrator, you good?
Question.
Go.
Thank you. And this might be too technical and maybe more so for finance, but can you talk to me a little bit about journal entries and those and how those impact some of the findings that you identified with cash management?
Thank you. So as it relates to some of the journal entries that were recorded, again, going back to those reviews, that supervisory review and understanding the nature of the journal entries and ensuring that you have adequate backup and support and purpose for the entries that are being recorded. As it particularly related to the cash management on the federal audit, many of the instances was that the information that an agency had presented to the federal government on its reporting could not be supported by the general ledger. Also, that would be the accumulation of the journal entries that went into Workday. And so there are differences, as Josh mentioned, in ensuring you kind of have a cohesive communication between how reports should be run, keeping the backup for, you go in, you run a report, and you give that data to someone. Did you keep that information so that you can then prove out at a later time? The other thing we saw is that post-close, so post-June 30, there were certain journal entries or adjustments that were made within the books and records and not ensuring that they had adequate approval. And so some of those journal entries had to go and be relocated, identified, and reversed so that the appropriate data was in the system. So I think it's that overall holistic internal control framework to ensure, that you're putting good data into the system so that you can get good data out of the system.
Okay. And I think I have two questions that are directly related to this. Do the number of journal entries that you see post end of the fiscal year, is that high in comparison to peers?
Short answer is yes.
Got it. That's what I thought. And then to your other point about, I want to repeat what I believe to be the issue or the process on the grant side. So is it that what you are finding is that the city, an agency receives a grant, they take it through the process. There's a amount that's in the grant award notice, and that is the amount that we are supposed to receive, but we're not properly doing the drawdown. And then on the accounting side, the grant is not being properly charged. Is that?
So what we're seeing is that the audit was unable to confirm
Okay.
that amounts were properly drawn down because the support was not there
Okay.
to evidence the appropriate drawdowns.
So you're comparing what's in the grant award notice, so that when the board accepts the grant and we execute the grant, there's that amount there. When you go back to the agency to verify that they received that amount, you can't reconcile that.
So what I would add to that is grants are usually drawn down over time.
Of course.
So let's say if we look at one quarter, and so you take, you have expenditures that you're supposed to report to say, this is how much I've spent this quarter. And then you give that amount to the federal government and you draw down. What should be left behind is the ability to rerun those reports and come up with that same dollar amount that you drew down for Q1 or Q2 or Q3 or Q4. So I'm not saying in total that the amounts, that the revenue is missing or anything like that, but it's being able to have the appropriate expenditures, and many of these are expense reimbursed.
Yes.
So you're proving that you already spent the dollars before you request to be reimbursed. So being able to reaccumulate
Yes.
what did you draw down to be able to evidence that every dollar you drew down, you spent before you requested it.
Got it. And then I'm going to wrap up my line of questioning here. That's what I was actually getting at, is the fact that most of these grants are on a reimbursement basis. And so as a part of the challenge is agencies being able to provide to you the documentation to show that that this is what they actually spent.
Correct.
To be reimbursed from the federal government. So those dollars aren't necessarily matching up.
Yes.
Got it. And then I had one other question related to the reimbursement piece, but I'll actually save that for finance. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I appreciate you being deeply in the weeds on this. All right. Hearing and seeing, Director, are you good?
I'm good, thank you.
Hearing and seeing no further questions, I really want to thank the team. I really want to thank Josh. The communication has been extraordinary. I know my team has asked a lot of questions, and we have truly appreciated the back and forth. I also want to thank the comptroller. I could not think of a better person to be in charge of this workflow and thinking about audits than Bill Henry. And so thank you for what you do, and appreciate it, and really will appreciate having this conversation in the city council, and just the ability to identify and move forward on a path toward correcting some of these deficiencies. Thank you all very, very much. Seeing no further questions, this item is noted by the board. The next item is SB 25. Oh, got it. Apologies. Finance, come on up.
It's management response time.
Good morning, Ioana Mositas, Deputy Director for Finance. I will do my best following a tough crowd and excellent questions, not to be repetitive, but I do think it's worth a deep dive on some of the issues. So I do want to speak first to timing challenges and improvement efforts, which should be on slide 6. You've heard, right, the primary contributing factors to the audit delay. I do want to personally note, and on behalf of Finance, that delay was unacceptable, but there were reasons for that. So limited staffing capacity during key reporting periods, the shortage of personnel with specialized audit, and just noting that local government ACFRs and single audits are really a subspecialty within accounting. And we did not have, despite our best efforts at recruitment, a team that had even one person who had seen a complete ACFR process from beginning to end. And as you saw, the auditors and the departments of audits note, it's complex. There are multiple pieces that go into those audits. So we do have process improvements underway, and you'll see it says actively backfilling key accounting vacancies. I want to note that that is very active. So we have 7 positions right now that are all posted. I can say that I personally have done over 40 screening interviews. So we're doing a skip level sort of interviewing where every position from the office support to the accounting assistants to our accounting systems administrators will all be interviewed by me so that we can share our vision, share the culture, and they will then go on to meet with our substantive experts in accounting for those next level interviews. It is still very challenging, but we hope to continue working on that. You'll note that we're doing some project mapping. We do feel that with our stakeholders in the Department of Audits, and of course our agency partners and the very active leadership, as you can see, of Madam City Administrator and Deputy City Administrator Kearney, will be mapping that throughout the summer so that we have clear expectations, right? And so that we also understand staff portfolios and identify among existing staff where there are needs for additional training or support. I hope that with the board's indulgence, I can do a little bit of a discussion on the programmatic findings and citywide findings. I will try to keep it brief. Noting that for the programmatic audit findings, as you've heard, that's really the day-to-day administration of the grant, how files are kept, how reports are made. And you'll see in the agency corrective action plans, of which we don't want to go through all of those, that there are very concrete steps that they've listed, noting that on the citywide level with the Grants Management Office and the leadership of still relatively new Ashley Meyer, as well as the DCA being very actively involved in the audit process, we'll be following up on those on a regular monthly basis, which is new for the City of Baltimore in terms of the programmatic findings. You're also going to know, I'm going to talk in just a few moments through some of the findings, and you'll hear the corrective actions, and you'll hear things about training on subrecipients. Solicitor, thank you for your question on that, or UEI numbers. And it merges, I think it was Mr. Seymour that mentioned some of the findings kind of cross over each other or they're impacted by each other, so that if you have a finding on reconciliation, you're likely to have a finding in another area. And likewise, those corrective actions that we're listing on the citywide findings are all going to benefit those programmatic findings. So with that, we'll jump to slide 9. I think the other key takeaway from my presentation should be that progression. So as the auditors noted, it's very difficult to go from you have a material finding to you have no finding. And as President Cohen noted, some of these findings have been here for a while. So it's important to see kind of what is the incremental progress along the way. And in terms of the finding related to post-year adjustments, for example, you'll see that this was a legacy finding, and to address it, part of the process was implementing Workday. And that happened in phases, right? So you had human resources and payroll, and that's why you see Ms. Nguyen note that for the payroll and time and effort on the grants, you've seen an improvement in those findings. Next up came the improved financial reporting and functionality. And so that happened with the go live in August 2022 of the financial accounting, the procurement, the supplier accounts, banking, and grants. That's incremental, right? So we got the system up and running. Then we began to get more and more people trained. So we're continuing that work. Specifically noting that in 25, for preparation of the 24 ACFR, we implemented Workiva. That was intended to be the software that pulls the data straight out of the system, avoiding the multiple spreadsheets that accountants previously used. There were some challenges with that. As we pulled data, we realized it mapped in different places than it did during our testing. Some of the consolidated balances didn't roll up correctly. So we'll be working over the summer, and you'll see that by July 2025 in our corrective action plan, BAPS has noted that they'll prepare a project plan for both the review of the mapping and then including in that project plan, how do we evaluate both the monthly and year-end closeout process to identify any additional enhancements needed. Slide 10, where this is the part about due to lack of formal procedures and accountability at various departments, the city can establish accurate balances of grant accounts. And you heard Mr. Seymour talk about the importance of that procedure. So to address these findings, regarding formal procedures, the city is focusing on 3 areas: technology, training, and grants oversight structure. The focus areas and action steps are discussed in more depth beginning on the next slide. So again, that incremental progress. First, we had the Workday implementation. Then we had the grants module where we looked at revising certain components. So I believe when we first started out, we didn't have UEI as the identifier in the field, right? That had to be changed. We also changed the workflow to add the grants management office to different portions of the workflow so that there would be approval on transactions within the grant. We also, I'm sorry. Am I running out of time?
Madam City Administrator.
Sorry. When you said you didn't have the UEI as a field, are you saying this was in Workday, that it originally wasn't in Workday and you had to add it?
I believe that's correct.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you. I just want to understand it.
And likewise, when we first launched with the module, the agency program staff were not in the workflow. So a fiscal officer was, and they approved based on what they knew of fiscal operations, but they don't necessarily know the individual grant requirements. So we were able to create an additional role and add them to the workflow. We launched a new budget process, so with the help of BBMR, requiring agencies to request grant work tag creation in Workday before, like, as part of the budget process, and not wait until after the budget was passed. The GMO office implemented monthly inactivation of grant work tags without an associated ward. So now the grants management office is pulling monthly reporting. They're identifying which work tags have been inactive for which period of time. They're contacting the agencies, and then they are deactivating as appropriate. GMO now serves as final approver for agencies' grant award creation, and now they're reviewing the budget, but also the calendar and setup. So there is a feature within Workday that allows our agencies to put in their billing schedule and to assign it to individuals, and that is a feature that now we are requiring agencies to use. And then the corresponding piece to that is that compliance and oversight part, right, where the grants management office is then reviewing that information. I think we also heard noted training. And so on slide 12, you'll see a list of some of the training. So again, progressive realization of our goal, which is no finding. In 2021, well, actually 2019, 2020, 2021, there were no citywide grants trainings offered by the Department of Finance. It did not exist. And so the great news is we have now not only created that, but we've set up these biweekly grants management sessions. So one type of session is really focused on a user group. You bring questions, there may be updates. The second session a month is the more formal training. And those trainings are on key topics that are designed to both address the findings, but address grants management's best practices. So you're going to see things like subrecipient monitoring, subaward setup, how to deal with 2 CFR 200 in the uniform guidance, grant accounting best practices, billing. These are all recorded. They're all saved with the corresponding materials, and I think very shortly will be up all together. They're up now. I'm getting the word from the audience, they're up now. So they're all up on a SharePoint for all of the agencies to be able to access at any time. Some topics are offered more frequently as needed by circumstances, so clearly with any changes in the federal grants landscape, there may be additional trainings that need to happen on guidance related to that. The great news about that is we're more nimble and able to do that in ways that we never were able to do before. I won't go too into depth. Slide 13, again, follows through on some of the additional oversight that was put into place specifically around UEIs, which did have several program findings from the agencies. And then more broadly, this slide 14 really just goes through the fiscal years in terms of what we are doing in FY25 in summary, and then in FY26. And noting that you're going to see both planning, additional policies related to subrecipient monitoring and UEI, a grants need assessment, and then coordinating on basic things, right? Like we should have access to every portal that every agency accesses to do drawdowns, to do reporting, and that we have in a centralized place in the city for the first time, thanks to the leadership of the CA, access to that information and are retaining it at a citywide level. Key best practices. Cash and cash equivalents, slide 15. I will just speak briefly again. In FY23, BAPS experienced significant staffing transition, and that continued into 24, where we just had specific challenges, both related to the Workiva implementation and then the loss of critical staff at a challenging time in the reporting period. I do want to give special thanks and a note to the board of a new face that you will see, which is Acting Chief Danielle Tillman for the Bureau of Accounting and Payroll Services. She came in April and really stepped up to lead the team, and I thank her and her team for their hard work. And I'm just trying to skim for some of the most important pieces. Maybe what I'll do is open myself up to questions.
Thank you, Ioana, for your good work. I will repeat that some of the findings are concerning, and I appreciate your responsiveness to them, and the council is looking forward to financial oversight and working directly with you to correct some of the deficiencies and move into a better place with it. I wanted to repeat the question that I asked of the team. It is your agency. Where are you going to start? I appreciated their response in terms of being able to improve the communication channels, being able to make sure that folks are trained properly, make sure there's strong supervision. For you, where do you start in terms of correcting deficiencies?
So I would say I think we are well underway, and we need to continue the good work. I think the staffing and training is critical in this respect. I mean, to give a visual, our financial accounting manager has 13 direct reports. So those individual component pieces of financial reporting are coming to one person. We are going through the reclass process to change that a little, because that's simply not manageable for one person. When you're reviewing the information, and I can say personally for myself, when I'm reviewing segments of the financial reporting, I have missed things. I've missed things when I've approved in someone's stead, because you're looking at a really large volume of complex information. So I think building up the team is critical.
Yeah.
For the existing staff that are there, I also really want to be mindful. They are working incredibly hard. And many of them, frankly, I saw them give up graduations and Mother's Days and all kinds of things to make sure this got done. We should not put people in that position. And a piece of that is that as we implemented Workday, which really is kind of incredible, I do want to give the city credit for that. The financial reporting before was 20 to 40 separate spreadsheets that people tried to compile, and I would say there were likely mistakes. They were harder to find. It is much easier to see the mistakes in Workday. That is a good thing. We want to embrace finding those, because that's where we get to a point where we eliminate the findings. But in doing that, what I found in working kind of really knee-deep with the team on this one is we have folks that they know their segment of the work very well. Now, how do we cross-train them so that they understand how their piece fits across kind of BAPS and across the agencies? How does the one thing that I'm doing impact the larger part of the process? And then how do we create some redundancies in the team, which is just, I think you've probably heard it in many agencies, creating that redundancy so that if someone does fall ill or does need to leave, you are in a good position. That's really critical work. Second piece to that.
Just pause right there real quick. One of the challenges that has come up in past Board of Estimates discussions is around just having that knowledge and institutional knowledge locked in, and that when someone leaves, that the whole system not fall apart. That is unfortunately something I've seen quite a bit in city government. I've been here a little over 8 years, and there have been too many instances where a single person is like the gatekeeper and controller of all of the language, and the language is written in Mandarin or some very difficult to process coding thing that nobody else understands. And so I just want to hone in on that point, which is I think it is extremely important that there be multiple folks within leadership, and that leadership be distributed, and that several people be able to own the information. I also want to hone in as well on your point you made earlier that I think it is really, really challenging for someone who is supposed to be processing very complex information to have 13 direct reports. That is obviously too much. And so it does sound like there are some management issues, and it seems like there is a strong need to address some management challenges so that one person at the top is not having 13 people and then trying to keep track of all the complex financial processes, not to mention the interplay and interaction with the agencies and back and forth. That just seems like way too much.
Absolutely, and I'll note that we have the full support and also urging / guidance from the city administrator, the mayor, and the DCA in terms of creating those redundancies and evaluating kind of the organizational structure. And I can speak for finance in the role of being the fiscal stewards, that over a number of years, as every agency, cut that standard 3% or 5% off their budget, finance was doing the same thing. And unfortunately, you saw attrition in some bureaus like accounting. And as we have worked incredibly hard at recruiting, I think we're seeing, given the economic times and what's happening nationally, we are seeing more applicants. But in prior years, it was very challenging to staff our leadership positions with individuals who had a significant enough experience in accounting and also a willingness to handle the complexity of local government, so that we had key leadership positions that would stay vacant, not through lack of trying. So I think we are turning the corner on that. I think also we cannot let up. We can't lose focus of that. That is the message to the team, and that is, that is the mission.
Understood. Appreciate that. Again, I think this is one of those sort of behind the black box kind of thing that like most people have no idea what is going on within the Department of Finance, and probably don't care, but it has profound impacts on the city's ability to function, on our ability to pay vendors, to have our agencies do what they need to do. And so I think this is one of them wonky, sort of nerdy, like, folks that the people up here love to delve into, but this kind of conversation probably does not translate great for television. And so all the more important that when it comes to that organizational management, having, whether it's through reclass, having the right people in the right seats, but also with the right org chart is extremely important. And again, appreciate the audit, but also the diligence to where we need to get better. Comptroller?
I'm sorry, could you introduce the acting chief of accounting again?
Absolutely, I would be pleased to. So our Deputy Chief of Accounting, Danielle Tillman.
There we go. Hi there.
Is serving as our acting chief.
Like you were gesturing back behind you, but she's totally blocked when sitting while you were standing where you were. So I was like, I'm not sure who she's talking about. Okay, there we go. Hi. Okay. All right, that was it. Thank you. Okay.
Yep. Thank you.
Any other questions? All right.
Oh, me.
City Administrator?
All right, thank you. Can we have our finance director join us at the podium here? Got it. So I'm going to make a few points, and likely we'll end with a question. So the first point I want to make is I want to thank the auditors. I did not get a chance to thank SB and Company for their diligence and their hard work throughout this audit process, and to thank the city auditor, Josh Pash, as well, for his coordination and leadership and working with the team and the entire audit department in the comptroller's office, as well as yourself, Mr. Comptroller, and you, Mr. Council President, who has been deeply engaged in this audit. So I think what that demonstrates is that this city is deeply committed to getting our financial controls in order, to have all of the elected officials from the mayor, the city council president, as well as the comptroller engaged on this, as well as the staff that have been dedicated to this process. So I want to acknowledge everyone's commitment to making progress on what has been a lingering issue for far too long when it comes to compliance in our financial controls. I want to talk a little bit about the city administrator's office and some of the changes that we have made so that we are building out capacity to focus in on compliance in a way that we had not before. I think one of the challenges that Joanna noted is that there just was not centralized tracking relative to audit findings, whether they be the findings from the city auditor or findings from the single audit. None of those things were coordinated and centralized. And so we're going to be the body that centralizes that within the city administrator's office. Part of the vision for bringing on the deputy city administrator with her background and experience is because she is a government auditor. And so she has been leaning in the past 3 months or so with the finance department, as well as with our city agencies, to ensure that we are building out and improving our internal controls. So I just wanted to acknowledge the Deputy City Administrator, Shamaya Kearney, and her leadership in her role in improving this audit process. I wanted the finance director to talk a little bit more, because it's not just accounting here. There are multiple divisions in the Department of Finance that are impacted by or contribute to some of the findings that we have within our audit. I want you to talk a little bit about some of the work that you're doing, whether it's on grants management, accounting, all the different divisions, and what we can expect to see in next year's audit, given where we are in the fiscal year. We're only 3 weeks or so away, well, maybe a month, from closing out the fiscal year. I'm losing track of my days here. But can you talk to me a little bit about what you are changing within the Department of Finance, and then what can we expect out of this year's audit? Or, this year's audit next year.
Well, thank you so much, and good morning. Michael Moxton, Finance Director. Well, that's right. Yeah, this is now June, and we are preparing to wrap up fiscal year 25. And that means that we are looking to coordinate between a budget and accounting and grants and procurement, all over the next few weeks, just as the budget process wraps up and the month wraps up, to put out guidance to every agency in the year to take it day by day and step by step to let everybody know what they need to do over the month of July and August to wrap up fiscal year 25 on time, to basically put a date and a stop to journal entries that we talked about a little bit earlier, to submit information on sub-grant recipient monitoring, basically to get everybody to communicate properly on time across the entire enterprise between the different types of finance that we do and between the different agencies that we have. That's going to take us through October, when we put kind of finishing point on numbers moving around, and that's going to take us into December to submitting an on-time ACFR and getting our numbers validated. This is going to be coordinated across the board by the Department of Finance with coordination through the Deputy CAO and the CAO. And this all starts now. We've been doing the preliminary work with the DCAO and across the Department of Finance. It's already started, and we're very excited about some of it because it is a big improvement for what the city's already been able to do through our grants office and through talking to city agencies about the kind of support that they need in order to basically submit their information on time. But agencies will see in the coming months, basically as soon as the budget process is done, simple, easy to understand guidance about exactly what needs to happen to close the books on time, and we will go from there.
Sounds like a plan. Real quick, Mr. Moxton, just thanks for your leadership as well. Pose the same question again. Do you feel like the biggest piece here is sort of somewhere between operations, communication, and training/management? I mean, it's kind of all the things, but just give me your flavor of
Absolutely.
Where we're.
I once got asked this question about payroll, which I think is now in a much better place. I once got asked this question about procurement, which I think is in a much better place. And my answers then, which is the same as now, is you need to put the people in place in order to train them. So the step one is let's get the people on board. We've been doing great at interviews. The silver lining of everything that's happening 35 miles to the south of us is we've got some people applying right now. And so we are going to jump all over that and get some more folks on board.
We're going to pick the federal cadaver clean.
We will get some great candidates, and we will staff up. And with the folks that we have and the folks that we are going to get, we are going to both train them and we are going to reorganize the org chart, and we've been in the process of that to make sure that staffing loads are correct and that we have that redundancy that we talked about. And then with that, we can put the proper training in place, which we've already started on, so that kind of goes in concert with what we've talked about. And then it kind of snowballs, because then you can talk about enterprise-wide training, and you can talk about coordination across agencies and making sure that everybody communicates. And that's the work that I just talked about that we're rolling out in June as we put out that policy guidance for all agencies that goes across procurement, across accounting, across grants management, across budget, to get everybody to see step by step exactly what they need to do. So it goes iteratively. I believe it starts with people and having the right people in place so that you can do everything else.
Understood. I would argue that we still have work to do on procurement. However,
yes, sir, I completely agree. I would argue that work is now doable because we have the people in place. There's a lot more work to do, but it is now possible to do it.
understood. So people, operations, training is sort of the path.
Yes, sir.
All right, I appreciate it. Good. All right, this item is noted by the board. The next item is SB 2511684, a request from the DPW to approve a water utility rate adjustment for Baltimore County. Period of agreement is 7/1/2025 to 6/30/2026. On behalf of DPW, we have interim Deputy Director, Mr. Matt Garbark. Deputy Director Garbark, the floor is yours.
Good morning, Mr. President, Mr. Comptroller, Madam Administrator, honorable members of the Board of Estimates. I'm Matt Garbark, the Interim Deputy Director for the Department of Public Works. The item before you is the annual request from Baltimore County to raise their water rate. Next slide. For fiscal year 26, the county is requesting that rates increase by 4.9%. This is the same level of increase for fiscal years 25 and 24. And for fiscal year 23, the increase was 4.7%. So this has been consistent for the last, this will be the fourth year of that general level. Water billing for the county is different than for the city, as we've talked about before. They are billed on a quarterly basis, whereas the city is billed on a monthly basis. They also have minimal consumption levels, and their rates are adjusted after that minimal consumption level, whereas for the city, we have the same level at all rates of usage. We also, it's important to note that we only bill county residents for water, not sewer or stormwater. Next slide. Baltimore City is under a legal requirement. In fact, it's Public Local Laws, Article 3 of Maryland. It's from 1945, that the mayor and city council of Baltimore shall furnish water to the Metropolitan District of Baltimore County at cost and entirely without profit or loss. So we are required to charge the county what their actual costs are. Not the same rate as Baltimore City, but at the actual cost of what it costs them to receive and use that water. That is a legal requirement. This has been in place for almost a century now, and that is actually state law. So, in fact, the charges are different than what city ratepayers pay, but that is the law that we have to comply with. Next slide.
Mr. Garbark?
Yes, sir.
Just for the viewing public, this is one of those issues that is very challenging from a public perception standpoint and sort of understanding why the rates look different on bills, why the rates are different. In 60 seconds or less, can you please... I got to keep it moving
phone
here.
a friend.
In one sentence,
I can help you if you need some help.
I got my lawyers.
Can you please explain for the board and the public why that discrepancy exists?
Yes. When do I begin?
You're already on the clock, man.
All right. Yes. So there are a couple of things. First of all, there's legal requirements that are put in. This is over a century, almost a century years old. And at that time, the city and the county had almost opposite populations and growth potential. So at that time, the county was very different than it is today. The city was looking at close to 1 million people. So the way it was set up in law was that the county was using a much smaller amount of water than they're using now. As they grew and developed, they built more infrastructure. Their infrastructure is a lot newer than our infrastructure, sometimes 50% as old. Ours is almost 2 centuries in some areas. We're still pulling wood and water mains out of the ground every so often. They have much newer facilities. That means that they're not needing to put nearly as much maintenance or efforts into fixing their pipes and all of that as we are. However, that gap has narrowed significantly in the past decade or so. The 5% increase has been going on for about 4 years that we're seeing with their rates. That has narrowed that gap in what the city and county residents see in their bill significantly. So that now, based on the Water Governance Task Force, the last report that they did, the city ratepayer and the county ratepayer are within just about $1 or $2 of each other, what they pay just for water. So it's just water. About 75% of a ratepayer's bill for the city is sewer and stormwater. So water is only a small portion, and that's all that we bill for Baltimore County residents.
Thank you. While I will note that you missed the 1-minute mark.
Yes, sir.
That
But
was
not by a
Sadly.
lot.
that was nevertheless
I've practiced this for a while.
a very concise
It was under 100 seconds.
analysis. So well done. And while I know I have literally the world's expert sitting to my right on this very topic, but I do not want a soliloquy or debate on the discrepancy. That is for a different task force. I will note that it is a continued concern for Baltimore City residents to pay more than Baltimore County residents. We appreciate the complexity of the system. We appreciate everything that you said, Mr. Garbark. Please continue, and please be pithy.
Yes, sir. I will. Certainly. Want me to go into any more? Do you have any questions?
I'm just waiting for the pith.
I can
Good.
bring the pith if you want it.
Bring the pith.
This is all stuff we've been over before. We have a cost allocation model. The basis for what we charge the county isn't actually our rates, but what our cost allocation model says is the cost of water. So what we do is we develop all of our costs, we put it together, we see what the county owes and what the city owes. We cannot legally charge $1, 1 cent over what the actual cost is. This was actually debated in litigation in the 80s or 90s, and we attempted to actually change some of those cost allocations. We were told that we cannot do that because of the state law. Next slide. The methodology for cost recovery is the county permits us to charge their residents.
Yep.
So we receive collections. If what the county owes at the end of the year exceeds what the collections are, then they pay us. If we collect more than what they owe, we pay them back. So we try to get to the right amount. And the last slide, next slide, the amounts that they have put together, we do believe are appropriate to cover the costs that they are expected to owe this year, and we do recommend that they be approved. Happy to answer any other questions.
Mr. Comptroller.
Yeah, I think this one's not too difficult. So do we ever actually over-collect from county residents?
We have, a couple years ago, we did. For most of the last number of decades, we have not, and they send us a cover. A few years ago, we did have an overage of that, and we actually applied that to the next year's balance that they owed.
Okay.
But they could request that we remit that to them.
Okay. I was like, but we don't send the money back individually to individual county accounts, and we don't did we do credits to individual accounts?
No, sir.
When we give back to the county.
To the county.
Okay.
It goes into their Metropolitan District Fund.
Gotcha.
account.
All right, thank you.
Madam City Administrator.
Yes. Is there a difference in collection rates between city and county residents and businesses?
It's not, I don't want to use the word material, we use that a lot, but not.
More significant.
Not significant deficiencies in that. It's generally similar to that. I will note that the city's bills are higher because we have sewer and stormwater. Therefore, that does run into the issue of just the higher the bills, sometimes people don't pay all of it.
Yep. And remind me of this, the county is, are they still in the legacy system?
They are. We are in the midst of moving them over to our new UMAC system. That's supposed to happen January 1 of this coming year.
Oh.
Comptroller.
I'm trying to remember if this ever came up before. The county puts the sewer charge on their tax bill,
Yeah,
right?
thank you.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so if I mean, I'm just going to make up numbers. Somebody has a $1,500 tax bill and a $500 sewer charge. They get a bill for $2,000.
Yes, sir.
If they send the county $1,500, does the county apply all of that $1,500 to the tax bill and say, you didn't pay your sewer? Or do they split it down the middle, or what? Just out of curiosity, do we know that?
Do you understand what?
I understand, yeah. I don't know the answer to that. My understanding is that it's billed as one. They are line items. I don't know the answer of how that differential
But
is
it does mean that people are tremendously incentivized to pay their sewer bill
Yes,
because their house could be put on the tax sale list
I would suppose so, yeah.
if they didn't pay their sewer bill.
I-
This is me hearing, like, you can hear the little
Yes, sir.
hamster in here.
The one
around.
issue I will note is yes, you're right, that you have higher collections, but you get it one time a year. So from a cash flow perspective, you're getting everything once a year, and if you have to adjust because of anything, whereas our monthly billing, we actually can maintain a stable cash flow throughout the entire year. They get it one time a year.
Stable cash flow is nice. More cash flow is arguably better.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yeah, I just want to
Director Zaid?
clarify one thing here, that the fact that is what we send to them is we send the water bill. They use the dollar amount in the water bill to use it for the sewer bill that they put on their tax.
Yes.
Amount, and the amount is roughly the same 1-to-1 ratio.
Still. Huh. Okay. All right, thank you.
All right. Again, I will note, it's a complicated system.
Yes, sir.
We know we have a whole task force to help us think about it. We are one region. We're Baltimore City and Baltimore County. We take care of each other and look out for each other. Continuing to get to the bottom of who should be paying what is important, and it matters to the city, it matters to the county. So appreciate this conversation, appreciate the work that Mr. Henry and others are going to do moving forward. Madam Administrator?
Yes, but one very quick question. Capital projects in the county. So you noted that the counties, that their system is more updated or modern than the city's. Ours is much older. When it comes to the cost for capital projects, have there been any major capital projects in the county?
In the county, when there are large water main replacements or expansions, yes.
Okay.
A lot of the large capital projects are to our facilities in the city. Part of the cost allocation model, we can actually model how much benefit
Got
the
it.
county uses from that project.
Got it.
For the headworks, for instance, even though that's sewer, for the headworks, that has about 50% benefit to the county, so they paid 50% of that project.
Thank
Same
you.
with our tanks and all of the improvements to our filters and other things. They pay a portion of that.
With the cost allocation model, does the county have any say in?
Yes.
Okay.
So the model, we get all the information, then there is a long period of time where every single cost, we go back and forth with them. Is this a cost? What was this? Was this last year? Was this year? Who paid for the cost? How much does it benefit the city? It's pretty exhaustive that we do it with their financial analysts and our financial analysts, and it takes a while to do that.
Just to the CA's point or question, just so as you're doing that back and forth, do we factor infrastructure investments that it sounds like the city needs to make in updating our facilities and wastewater treatment and all that versus the county not having to upgrade infrastructure as much?
So about 30 years ago, when we went through the arbitration, looking at some of the costs, the subject of that was actually changing how we allocated the cost. Before, it was looking purely at debt service, purely at just cash receipts for operations. The way we changed it, we looked at what we need for the future to maintain in terms of what we need to raise for cash in terms of these improvements for the project. There was debate over that. The arbitration committee ruled in our favor. So that's now how we actually allocate that. We look at what we need for the system as a whole. We build that into what we need to build the county for, and that's part of the allocation that we put in.
Got it. Comptroller?
Thank you. You had a slide up there earlier that had a citation from what looked like some part of state law.
Yes, sir.
With the wording, that might have been it.
Right.
Yeah, that's
Yes,
it.
sir.
Okay. The mayor and city council of Baltimore shall furnish water to the metropolitan district of the county at cost and entirely without profit or loss. The plain language reading of that would imply that the mayor and city council of Baltimore are capable of furnishing water to someone else for more or less than cost.
That has been, that's part of the debate that went through arbitration as well. This particular language is only explicitly applied to Baltimore County.
Okay. So I guess the reason I'm asking it this way is if that language read, the mayor and city council of Baltimore shall furnish water at cost and entirely without profit or loss, would that raise or lower city water bills?
I don't know how to answer that. We'd have to look into that.
I think we should definitely look into that.
But this is state law. So
Right.
it would require a change at the state level.
I know some state people. Yeah,
Yes, sir.
okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay, all right.
CA?
I'm sorry, I took us down this rabbit hole where we were about to end. So now,
We so enjoy it when you stand in for the mayor doesn't take us down rabbit holes.
but now, looking at this, profit or loss, and this might have been the subject of the arbitration as well, right?
was.
Because are we looking at profit or loss in the year, right, or in the time that we are denoting the new rates? Or is it just general loss, right? So, because there could be some argument that is, that we put forward that, especially when it comes to some of these capital projects or other investments in the city, that long-term, there may have been a loss from us not collecting more from the county. Was that?
That was precisely what
Okay.
was looked into, as well as our equity investment in the facilities, which had, if we invested in the 20s or the teens, what does that equity apply now based on our investment had we not done that? And if you look at a lot of private corporations, they can factor that into their cost for their customers. We had looked to do that in the 80s. The arbitrators ruled explicitly that that constituted profit. They actually dug back into the 1945 laws and found records of legislative intent that that type of thing was not what they wanted.
Yeah, which takes us actually to, an important point that the CA has mentioned, that is since 2002, with the consent decree coming in, the consent decree identifies so much additional cost due to neglect for so much prior years. So maybe we could take a step back and take a look at this one at this point and argue that point. Let's have that discussion.
Yes, sir.
now.
Yeah.
And one final question here, debt. So we have to finance these projects because they are so significant, and we're incurring debt and we're paying whatever interest to finance debt for these significant capital projects. Is that also considered?
Yes.
Okay.
So debt service, originally it was just debt service, so we would have to outlay it, and then we'd look at how much we owed as part of the cost. What we changed to, it was called a utility basis model, where we looked at how much investment we needed in terms of future costs for the program. While we couldn't look at anything that wasn't related to the investment we needed, such as appreciation or equity or anything like that, we could factor in the additional cash that we needed in the future, and that's what goes into our rate model.
Yep, and then really the last question. So when so there's an opportunity cost, or there's a cost here, right? If the city is taking on debt to perform these projects, that means that we cannot take on, that means we may not be able to take on debt for other things. The county doesn't have to take on the debt. So to me, there's a cost there of us having to incur all of the debt ourselves
Yes.
versus the county taking on any of the debt.
That, to my knowledge, has not,
Model becomes very.
Yeah.
that, to my knowledge,
Okay,
is
I'm
not
good.
included in this, because that is beyond the direct cost that's documented.
Quickly, Director Zaid.
Yeah, very quickly. Can you mention a little bit how the conversation with the county have changed in terms, just within the
Yes.
last few months or a year, in which we brought them in to the discussion with the wastewater and how they're
Yes.
part of now, going back to the consent decree, how they're involved now?
Yes, so this is all water, and again, this is vitally important, but the massive costs for the system are in wastewater. The county sends almost half, if not three-quarters of their waste to our plants, on both plants. Howard County does the same, Anne Arundel County. That's next. The issue that we've talked about forever is just the plants themselves. Everyone agrees we should upgrade them and we pay for costs. But oftentimes, the sewer mains that we get county waste are our sewer mains. They come from the county. So while we're talking about the county's consent decree for their sanitary sewer overflows, which they can't really fix all of theirs until we fix ours, because if we don't have a large enough pipe to handle their additional waste, there's going to be no benefit. So MDE actually brought this up. There have been conversations to start working together to align some of these projects so that when they're right-sizing their sewer mains, we're doing the same with ours so that we don't have the issue and they don't have the issue, and we can get credit for all of that.
But then we get, but,
Mr. Comptroller.
but we then get to ascribe some of that cost to
Yes.
them.
Exactly.
Because we would not have done it if it had not been, they were increasing their amount
Absolutely
of it.
correct. Yes, sir.
Okay.
Are we, just real quick, Bill, are we still doing, the task force, I know it had its thing, is the General Assembly, are we bringing that back?
I believe there will be a conversation in the near future about that.
Great. All right. Looking forward to it. All right. Anybody else? No more rabbit holes. All right. Seeing no further questions, I would entertain a motion to approve this item.
So moved.
Second?
All those in favor of approving this item say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. The item is approved. The next item is a walk-on item at the request of the administration. SB 2511919 is a request from the Department of Housing and Community Development to approve an addendum to an agreement between the Housing Authority of Baltimore City and the United States Department of Housing and Urban Development. On behalf of the administration, we have Deputy Mayor Justin Williams. Deputy Mayor Williams, the floor. Where are you? Oh, there you are.
He's trying to decide which is the most efficient and effective way to get to the front.
Promised him I would play Eye of the Tiger and forget.
No walk-on music for you.
Yeah, good.
Go for it.
Good,
Mr. Williams, the
members
floor
of
is
board-
yours.
Morning, members of the board. Justin Williams, Deputy Mayor for Community and Economic Development. I'll be pithy, but also if there are questions that are more in-depth, I'm joined this morning by Janet Abrahams from Housing Authority Baltimore City, Arlisa Anderson, and I'm Michael Ryan, Project Manager at HABC. This is a simple request before you. I think we have a slide presentation, but in the desire to be pithy, you know the background about the PSO project from 2018. The city and HABC were co-grantees. This request is for an addendum to that agreement. As co-grantees, the city has to sign it. The issue here is HABC is establishing what's called an endowment trust to protect the money that's used for people services or supportive services for Perkins residents. It is just HABC's money. There's no real role for the city. We are just signing as a co-grantee. Without the action of us to sign this addendum, there's a risk that the federal government could recapture the funds. So just putting this money into a trust allows it to be safe from recapture. Again, emphasizing these 3 points: no city funds involved. The city assumes no financial responsibility. There's a side letter between us and HABC to memorialize that. And it's time sensitive. This needs to go forward quickly. That's why it's a walk-on. And so I appreciate the board's support to allowing this walk-on item.
I appreciate it. I will note that one of my consternations about this project, which I, for the most part, love, I think it is a great investment in creating intentionally diverse communities in an area that felt neglected, World War II era public housing, not good in many different ways, giving the folks that lived in Perkins, Somerset, Old Town, in the general area, an opportunity to live in beautiful, modern housing and to do so in a mixed, diverse community with the potential for a new grocery store and all the different things is absolutely fantastic. I am frustrated about slow movement on City Springs Elementary School. We, Deputy Mayor, and I appreciate your support in convening. We convened a meeting a few weeks ago about some bottlenecks and jam-ups within the process. Where we left that meeting was, I believe, DHCD needed to make a $20 million payment so that we could move the process forward. This is a obviously complex financial arrangement with multiple capital stacks, with the city, with HABC, with the schools. There's a lot of different hands involved in this, but the community and the principal have been frustrated that it has been slow going. And so that 20 million, has that moved? And can you please give a quick update?
In anticipation of this discussion this morning, I checked in with the budget director. She said she had a conversation with the chief of staff in the school system about setting an invoice. So it is ready to go. It should be moving, if not today, like this week, because literally it's the invoice and the payment processing. So
Okay. I had thought that the school system had sent invoices, but it was we were waiting on DHCD to pay the bill. But
I checked in with Laura Larson, last night, knowing this might come up, and that was her readout. I don't know if Ms. Abrahams, do you happen to have any more knowledge? I can.
So I can join. Yeah.
Madam City Administrator.
Thank you. You can come on up too. So I was involved in brokering the deal with the school system around City Springs. There's a couple of things that I want to be very clear about when it comes to our support of City Springs, but also just the school system. So in addition, I think this year our capital investment in our schools has gone up to about $27 million with the addition of the GO borrowing. And this City Springs project is on top of the 21st Century Schools and the additional GO borrowing. And what is it? Is it $20 million is the total? There is an agreement that we brokered with the school system. I think we executed an MOU that outlines how payment is to be distributed to the school system. But again, the school system is responsible for building and doing the project. And so I'll work with the team to make sure that all of, and Justin, if I'm wrong, please weigh in here. I will continue to work with Justin and the team here, but I just want to be very clear. The school system is and should be coordinating with the principal. That is not the role of this administration. We are coordinating directly with the school system as we do on all capital projects. That's not something that we do directly with principals. And I think we can ensure that there's that level of communication, but that communication should be with the school system and the principal as we are communicating directly with the school system and making the payment to the school system.
Yeah, and
I'll update. I had
Go ahead.
checked my notes that, Laura said actually she received the invoice from schools last night. This is yesterday, so she received
Talking to the mic, please.
Sorry. I misread the message. So she received the invoice from the schools last night. This is yesterday, so I received the invoice as of Monday, and so will be paid, processed this week.
Okay.
But is,
Director, do you want to?
No, I mean, CA Leach
into the mic,
is
please.
correct.
Please
The-
announce your name and.
I'm sorry,
your stuff.
Janet Abrahams, CEO of the Housing Authority of Baltimore City.
Yeah.
CAO Leach is correct. The MOU clearly designate the amount of funding that will be distributed on a time limit. There was a delay, but it's my understanding that the school, they invoiced, they should be receiving their funds. However, it did not stop them from moving forward on their commitment relative to designing and starting that process. So there should have been some, I understand your frustration with the process. It was supposed to start a while ago. However, I just want to be clear from a funding perspective, there have been so many different obstacles, COVID, all the different things that happened that delayed this
I
process.
fully get it,
Okay.
and I appreciate, again, the complexity of this project. And overall, I think PSO has been, I mean, still knock on whatever, but it is going in a very positive direction. However, it is very important that when a commitment, and I'm not saying this is the city's commitment, but when a community hears we're getting a new school within the next 2 years, and then it's several years and there's not a shovel in the ground, it is frustrating to that principal. To the CA's point, I am not insinuating that it is our responsibility to communicate with that principal. That is clearly the school system's responsibility. What is our responsibility is to pay our bills. And so that's all I want to say is I understand that this is all outlined. My understanding coming out of that meeting that we held was that the delay at that point was on DHCD. So if I have misinformation, but that is where we left our last conversation with all parties. And again, I want to note that this is a complicated, multi-party, challenging arrangement, not the normal situation when we do a 21st century school or when we just rebuild a school. And so I want to appreciate that for the public record. I'm not doing my job if I'm not advocating for the children and families of City Springs.
No, and I clearly understand that. And of course, you know, one of my contention with this whole process is that there is that underlying implication that there is no communication, and that's not true. There are meetings that are being held, and from the HABC side, we do hold meetings, and it's called the PSO public meetings, of which Principal Roquetta is invited to those meetings, and there are updates that's given. Where there may be some confusion, HABC, we're not the sole project manager for the school. It is the school system that is the project manager. So, and we're working through that, whatever that communication issue is. We do have some charrettes coming up with the community of where we will talk a little bit more about what it takes to really build this 21st century school.
Yeah.
Not 21st century, 950 seat state-of-the-art school.
And Director, I know you're having meetings. I know you're meeting with the community. I know you're actively engaged with the principal at City Springs. I know,
I just wanted to
I'm
go
not
right
in any way insinuating those conversations are not happening. What I am simply stating is that there were misaligned expectations of when this school was going to be delivered, and it has been challenging for me to get the right amalgamation of the different representatives of the different parties in the same physical space to be able to look at each other across from the table and say, okay, have we sent you the invoice? Have we paid the bill? I believe we are headed in that direction and appreciated very much, again, the deputy mayor, the administrator, you, and the level of firepower that was in the room when we discussed this. I just want to see it move forward as quickly as possible so that those kids can get their new school.
Yeah.
Well, in August.
Madam, hang on 1 second.
No worries. And I don't have the date in front of me, but again, I want to remind us of the timeline. I think we took City Springs to this board several months ago. I can't remember.
It's been a while. I
It's
don't
been
have
like
the
maybe
date.
8 months or so
Yes.
ago, or something along those lines.
For the funding.
Just for the funding, because
funding,
it took
yes.
us time to identify the funding source and how we were going to contribute to paying for City Springs. That was the first hurdle. Matter of fact, the young people joined us as well as the principal in this very chamber to celebrate that movement. I think the thing that I want to be like very clear about is we are regularly communicating with the school system. The school system can, and they always do, raise their hand whenever there is an issue and whenever we happen to owe them money for whatever reason. And I want to be clear that it is not the money itself that was the delay in the construction. The school system, they had already committed to building the project. We committed to providing the funding, but that is not slowing down the project. But again, I think as a next step on this, since I was unable to join that meeting, what we will do is follow up with the school system to just look at the construction timeline, like where they are in the design process, so that we can share with you, Mr. Council President, as well as share with the general public in City Springs what a realistic timeline looks like for construction. But I do not believe that the money was the issue, but I will confirm that with the school system.
Right, and happy to report that August of this year, in August, you will start seeing demolition activity of the Lombard School. So that's a good thing. And then the process will begin for the construction, and that will take 18 to 24 months from the date the contract is let.
That would be great. Again, I'm really looking forward to this project. I realize I brought us down a rabbit hole on this one, which was not exactly germane to the board item, but I think it is very personally important to me that every commitment that gets made to kids is fulfilled, because the kids don't care which of the adult systems are moving the money. They just care that they get a school. That said, I appreciate it. Appreciate the city administrator being willing to lean a little bit into this conversation. I will say that, again, there was a little discrepancy from our last meeting in terms of where it was financially, but I know that everybody is working to make this happen. I know that this is a hard, difficult, challenging, uphill thing involving the feds and involving us and the state. It's just a lot. So I understand all of it, and I truly, truly appreciate it. I'm a former teacher. I'm a dad who's sending my kids to city schools. I'm going to keep advocating for that school to get built as quickly as possible. Thank you. Are there further questions from the board? Hearing and seeing none, I would make a motion to approve this item. Entertain one. All of those in favor of approving this item say aye.
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 Those opposed say nay. The item is approved. The next item is a walk-on item at the request of the administration, SB 2512012 is a request from the mayoral administration to approve the First Amendment to office lease agreement with the Maryland Port Administration on the 27th floor of the World Trade Center at 401 East Pratt Street. On behalf of the administration, we have Tanya Miller from the mayor's office. Ms. Miller, the floor is yours.
Hi, good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. Council President, CA, Solicitor, Madam Solicitor, Comptroller, and Director. As mentioned, I am Tanya Miller Hall. I'm the Senior Advisor for Arts and Culture. For the Mayor's Office, I'm requesting the board approve a short-term lease between the city and the Baltimore Port Administration and the Department of Transportation. The new lease will run from June 1, 2025 through November 30th of 2025. It's a short-term lease agreement for 5 months. This is a request to extend our current lease that expired on May 30th. That lease ran from 2005 and was extended for another 10 years to 2017. So that lease expired on May 30th. As everyone knows, the Top of the World space is a much beloved space. It serves as a special events venue, but also a tourist attraction. BOPA has been managing the facility on behalf of the city for the last 20 years. And so we're asking for this extension for the next 5 months. One, to sort of button up some of the hardscape and fixtures and things that they've requested that we remove from the facility, but also there is a small appetite to maybe to extend the lease past this 5 months. And so that gives us a little bit more runway to have those conversations, to further those conversations.
Thank you, Tanya. I want to appreciate you, BOPA, the mayor's office, my colleague, Councilman Blanchard, who has been a great champion and advocate for this, Senate President Ferguson, the governor's office, the port, everybody who has been involved in this. I know a lot of work has gone in, so just want to lift it up and appreciate it. Are there any questions for Ms. Miller, Comptroller Henry?
Not so much a question as much as I want to express my full-throated support for trying to extend the lease. I think that the Top of the World is a great space, and I think it would be a disappointment if the city were to lose it, unless the state was going to basically run it the same way but themselves. And I suspect that might not be what the state intends. I think it's just going to become office space.
Yeah.
And I think, frankly, we can find a better way to show off what is really a unique piece of property in the harbor.
Could not agree more. Seeing and hearing no further questions, I would entertain a motion to approve this item.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor of approving this item, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, say nay. This item is approved.
Thank you.
As there is no further business before the,
I'm very sorry. I read
Madam Clerk.
11421 into the non-routine
Okay.
for sludge thickening.
Oh, I thought we took that off.
Took it out.
Okay.
Okay, so, well, then.
We need to just approve.
Just do a quick vote then. I'm sorry. I read that into the non-routine, so I effectively pulled it out of the routine agenda, and I think the intention was to put it into the routine. So if we could just do a quick,
Just read it.
please.
Understood. Sorry, which one am I reading?
Or I can read it very quickly.
Oh, she'll read it.
Yeah, Madam Clerk, if you could read it, and then I can.
The item in question, we read into the non-routine, but the intention was to move it to the routine agenda, so we need to do a quick vote for housekeeping's sake. That item is SB 2511421, Department of Public Works. This is an award for SC 994 clarifiers and gravity sludge thickeners rehabilitation, and this is a contract with Ullaman Shudi Construction for $79,900,000. Thank you.
Thank you. I would entertain a motion to approve this item.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor of approving this item say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. As there is no more business before the board and no more rabbits or holes to go down, we will now adjourn this meeting. The next regular meeting of the Board of Estimates will occur on Wednesday, June 18th, 2025 at 9 a.m. I thank everyone for participating and tuning in.
Okay. Good afternoon, TV 25. Apologies, folks. Our BOE meeting ran a little long this morning, so we are just getting ourselves organized to open for today. And we only have one bid today. We have no addenda to announce. And again, this is the Board of Estimates bid opening for June 4th, 2025. No addenda and one bid for procurement. This bid was for RFQ 000710 roller skates. It's just fun to say roller skates, don't you think? And we have a number of bidders this time, so we're very excited. And up first we have,
Good morning.
and I
or
think there's a total,
afternoon,
correct?
Madam Clerk.
It's not
yes.
itemized.
First bid is from Mood Supply LLC.
Okay.
We have one original, one flash drive.
Do we have a dupe?
we have no duplicate.
Okay. So after you read the amount, if you would hand me the original.
We are so excited to find you the amount.
Do you feel I'm rushing you?
Total bid amount, $109,062.50.
Okay, let me read that back. 109,062.50.
That is correct.
May I see the original?
Yep, it's on, let me tell you. Pages aren't numbered.
Okay. Okay, that bidder was Mood Supply LLC, and the total bid amount is $109,062.50. And here you go, Tawanda. And up next,
We have a bid from Shore Grip International.
Thanks.
I have one original, I have one flash drive. And I have one. Are these complete copy? How many copies should we be looking for? How many copies should we be looking for? One. Just one? Okay. All right. But
That one has 3
this
copies?
doesn't,
It said like 3 copies and 1 original.
yeah, this is one. This is 2. This doesn't look like a full one. Oh, this is it. It's just discombobulated. So 1 original, 2 paper copies, 1 flash drive.
Okay.
A
And
lot of dead trees. And the total basis for the total bid amount is $95,425.
that number is 95,425.00.
Correct?
May I see a copy? Oh. That bidder is Shore Grip International for $95,425.00. Thanks, Tawanda. Okay.
Okay. Next up, third bid is from Sesto 3 LLC. I have 1 original, 2 duplicates, and 1 flash drive.
Okay.
And the total bid amount is $102,475.
That number was 102,475.00.
Correct? Let me give you a copy.
Thank you. And that bidder was Sesto 3 LLC, and the total bid amount is $102,475.00. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, and the last bid we have from, let me read their name properly. Bisonte.
I like the Italian flair you put on that.
Industrial USA, so
Makes total
it's a New
sense.
Jersey flair. And
They're local, according
me
to
1
the
minute.
address, I think.
Okay, let me find.
Do we have a flash
And then
drive?
the total, yes, in a flash drive.
I'm
We
sorry,
have
you said
one
one?
original, 2 duplicates.
Okay.
Sorry, it's not stickies. And the total is 101, 505 and 90 cents.
That number was 101, 505.90.
Correct.
Yay, look. This one came with a sample. This is the best bid ever, Rufina. Procurement's joining us today to take their bids home with them, and we've never gotten fun samples before. Okay. So, and I'm confirming that bidder one more time, Basante Industrial USA LLC, and the total bid amount is $101,505.90.
Correct.
And just, this goes back together like this. I don't want to mess up the organization. These are a size 9. They work for me. Except that I can't roller skate.
And after the show, the clerk to the Board of Estimates will skate around the Board of Estimates room. Charm TV, we look forward to that footage.
So that was our final of 4 bidders for our most fun bid yet, which was RFQ 000710 roller skates. And that concludes our bid opening for today. Our next bid opening is on June 11th, 2025 at 12 noon, and we'll see you all then. Thanks for tuning in for this very brief opening today.